Everybody stuck in the clouds for your Saturday. Yeah, the marine layer and what we call a southerly surge. You can kind of see how the clouds are moving from south to north. That was expected. We did have low clouds down the Salinas Valley. They're about the only ones that cleared out today. The cloud deck pretty deep too. A little clearing actually around the peninsula, and you can see that again when you have a southerly flow. As we zoom in, you can see you'll get a little bit of clearing maybe off the peninsula. It really hasn't been much. A poke or two of sun. But if you're in Santa Cruz, don't expect any clearing here today. And cooler day, of course, because of the cloud cover, keeping the temps down. A little tropical moisture down off to our south, and a couple of cold fronts headed down from our north. So that's something we will be keeping an eye out for, maybe a little bit of rain Monday night and Tuesday night. Central Coast family, little quick update for Saturday, about 2:30 here. Waiting on the tide to drop so we can go surf, right? There's been some talk of rain, so there's actually a lot to get to here today in terms of both two cold fronts headed to the Central Coast, Northern California, Pacific Northwest, tropical moisture embedded in those, a Cat 5 hurricane off the East Coast. So we'll just get you started with some local weather here. Not expecting any precip here today, tonight, tomorrow. We do have a southerly flow, and that has banked up low clouds into Santa Cruz and really along the entire Central Coast. So no clearing today. Yeah, and it feels a whole lot cooler, even though it's really not that cold out. With all that tropical moisture earlier in the week, we did get some showers, and we had the leftovers, again, from some tropical storms. It was very humid and warm. This definitely feels a little chilly. First day I could say that I'm keeping the windows closed. I don't know. We have to transition, right? Our bodies and minds have to transition to a fall pattern where it's going to be getting cooler. Days are getting shorter. Nights are getting longer. All right, back to the rain. This first front starts coming in basically Sunday night, Monday morning. It is possible we could get a few light showers, mist, drizzle up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Kind of hard to tell. We'll look at it again tomorrow. But it's possible that there could be some wet on the roads up in the Santa Cruz Mountains on Monday morning for the commute. And I actually have to go over the hill from Santa Cruz into San Jose, so that may affect me as well as many of you. Again, I'm not really expecting anything, but we'll look at it again tomorrow. It's kind of what we call orographic lifting. Radar and models don't pick up on that very well at all. Either way, though, this first front on Sunday night into Monday night pretty much falls apart. Again, maybe a couple of scattered showers. It's the second front, and these are coming down from the Gulf of Alaska, so they have a little bit of cold air. Not a lot, but a little bit. The other thing they have is they've entrained some tropical moisture. There were some really big typhoons out across the other side of the Pacific, and they've done what we call recurved and gone up into the North Pacific, and now they're just, regular old North Pacific storms, and some of that moisture is getting entrained in some of these cold fronts. So that's kind of the X factor on this. As we look, here we are on Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, it looks like there's a front just to our north. And again, this timing could mean that it's over the Central Coast on Wednesday morning. So the Wednesday morning commute has a better shot. You'll also notice that it sort of has this, the front is more well-defined. We'll just say that. So a better chance, at least the way it looks right now, for Wednesday to get a few showers. And you can kind of see it kind of fizzles out over the Central Coast. So we may not get a lot of rain out of it, but certainly the chance for some light rain, and it may just kind of hang around all day Wednesday into Wednesday night and kind of just fall apart and leave some clouds around through Thursday. So we'll take a look at that. And then after that, we're pretty much going to be dry. Good afternoon, everybody. Check this out. This is Humberto, a Category 5 hurricane well off the East Coast, north of Puerto Rico. You want to talk about a great swell for Puerto Rico. If you've ever gone there, hold on, man. What we call Wildo's Wilderness and Rincon, and oh my gosh, all of those incredible surf spots are going to be big. Outside of that, thankfully, Humberto not expected to make a landfall anywhere, and thank goodness for that. Winds of 160 miles an hour sustained, an incredible presentation on visible satellite imagery. You don't get a better looking hurricane than Humberto. I have shot a little video of that along the page here, so check that out, the visible satellite imagery, unbelievable. So there it is as of Saturday afternoon. And we talked about this weeks ago, honestly, about a late season hurricane season coming in to the East Coast. A quick view here of Hurricane Humberto. Holy cow. I mean, you want to talk about a storm that fired up. This thing has 160-mile-an-hour winds. Humberto is a very serious hurricane. Look at the structure. I mean, this is about as perfect as a hurricane could look. Just meteorologically unbelievable. There is Puerto Rico, and of course all the islands in Hispaniola, Haiti, Cuba, and then the east coast of the United States, Florida, going up through the Carolinas. There's the Outer Banks. We'll zoom in a little bit because this is just amazing. I mean, look at, you can see the shadowing too on the eye wall, right? So the sun is on the west half, right? The west side of this image, casting a shadow down inside the eye. And then you can see the eye wall on the eastern edge still has some sun, kind of like if, you know, the sun was coming down and a tree was blocking it and you were far enough away from the tree, you would still be in the sunshine. So just incredible imagery here this afternoon. And the good news is Humberto is not supposed to make a landfall, but, you know, we'll be watching Humberto pretty closely. I'll show you the track here in just a minute. Okay, here's a look at the track for Humberto, which again is currently here Saturday afternoon, is a Cat 5 hurricane with winds sustained at 160 miles an hour. Luckily, it will pass to the west of Bermuda. They will get, you know, obviously huge swell. I'm not sure if they'll get any wind or rain out of this. It's just going to depend on how close Humberto gets. And, you know, if you were listening maybe a month ago, or at least 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about the hurricane season sort of being a dud, you know, across the Atlantic. And part of that was due to Saharan dust and a lot of wind shear and a lot of other factors I'm not going to get into. And we just knew we weren't really going to get any tropical systems. There were a bunch that tried to get going. But what we also knew was that the oceanic heat content, which is the energy for hurricanes, right? It's the fuel, that hot ocean water, was at like record levels. So there was an incredible amount of fuel. And at some point, conditions would become more favorable when that next spark came over. And the spark is what we call a tropical wave. It's an area of showers and thunderstorms that move across, and when it gets into a favorable position, can become a tropical depression, which could become a tropical storm, which eventually becomes a hurricane. And the peak of hurricane season historically has been September 11th, right around that week. It's always the peak of hurricane season, basically on the eastern seaboard, across the Atlantic. And we didn't have anything going on at that time, but we knew that the potential for a late season, in terms of a late hurricane season, sort of a dramatic late hurricane season, was there. And here we go. And, you know, now we're looking at a Cat 5. Thankfully, it doesn't look like it's going to make a landfall. So that's good. You can see the track there. Obviously, lots of surf. They've had plenty of surf last week along the East Coast and surf all this week, obviously, from Humberto. But it's just interesting to see, again, this kind of just come up out of almost nowhere in the last 48 hours. I mean, we've been tracking it, but it's just how quickly it went from, you know, a tropical storm to a Cat 5 hurricane. But again, it's that fuel, you know, when you have that kind of fuel, and we sort of know that analogy on the West Coast with forest fires, right? You get a fire if it's humid and the fuels aren't that dry and you don't have the strong winds. You know, generally firefighters get out and they put it out. But when you've got the a huge amount of dead trees and fuel and wind, and we know what happens, we get a spark and all of a sudden, you know, we've got something major. For us, though, in terms of fire danger, by the way, we're looking good. We've got 2 cold fronts coming our direction with some rain, cooler temperatures, and cross our fingers that we can kind of keep that pattern going for the next month and then get enough rain that we could say goodbye to fire season. But we're still a ways from that, but stay tuned. Okay, we're going to take a look at something a little bit techie here. It's certainly not the kind of thing that I'm able to show on TV very often. Just don't have the time. But this is what we call integrated vapor transport. Is what we're looking at is water vapor in the atmosphere. And if you remember, when we talk about atmospheric rivers, we're talking about areas in the atmosphere that have a lot of water vapor. Let's just say extra fuel to make rain. Usually that is associated in many cases with tropical moisture coming from Hawaii or just coming from the tropics. And what you're looking at here are certain areas. You can see the darker shading here, the darker shading here, and the darker shading here. This is Tropical Storm Narda. She is hanging out off of Baja. We'll get a little swell from her. she will decay and just be remnant moisture that this cold front right here may pick up on some of and may throw into both central and northern California. We talked about possible rain amounts for Tuesday night through about Thursday. Not looking at a lot from that. But there's a secondary cold front that will be coming down out of the Gulf of Alaska. Normally, a cold front out of the Gulf of Alaska this time of year is not much, but there's this recurving tropical system. This was a big tropical cyclone that came across the Pacific and kind of buffeted parts of the Philippines, etc., last week, and has now recurved off into the North Pacific. It's not a tropical cyclone anymore, but there's a lot of moisture available. And some of this moisture may get entrained with the second cold front. And that's one of those sort of those X factors that, hard for the models to put all together. But this is the type of thing we look at as forecasters to see how much, potential there is really for rain. And that kind of ups the potential for any front when you start to entrain some extra moisture into it. And that makes sense. And then, of course, when we talk about atmospheric rivers, we're talking about the potential for a lot of moisture. This isn't quite that, but there is certainly a tap to the tropics, and in a weird way, you could say it's maybe a mini atmospheric river. Whether that reaches the Central Coast or not, and that's all to come this week. But any rain at this time of year is just we're looking at it, we're going, hey, we're clapping our hands, crossing our fingers, and hoping for the best in terms of rainfall, because the more rain we can get now, it will lower fire danger, as we are in the highest time for fire, obviously September, October. And we know last year we had fires, maybe not locally, but November, December, and January, all those fires down in Southern California. So the more rain we can get to the West Coast, the better off we're going to be. And we have potential out there. So I'm liking the looks of this. And I just wanted to show you this because this is sort of something I usually do behind the scenes, but wanted to just show you what happens here. As I put this into motion, you'll see these systems get closer. You can still see, here's your tropical route here. That's Narda. But again, she's not headed our direction, but some of the leftover moisture. You can see that second system, how all of that moisture is now coming across the Pacific and then starting to dive southward. And watch as it heads towards the West Coast. Here's that first system, by the way, basically in a couple of days. And we continue. You can see this system really kind of fizzled out more or less, right? There really wasn't much to that, and we don't expect much rain out of that one. But as we go a little bit further in time, we get into Tuesday night and Wednesday, and then into Wednesday night and Thursday, you can see there's a better shot at what was, again, the tropical system holding on to a cold front. There's that cold front again coming in October 1st, October 2nd to the Central Coast. So this will be interesting to see. We could pick up some decent rain in Northern California out of that. We're just going to have to see. But I like the looks of it, and you can see that there are systems kind of sliding across the Pacific. So that is really nice. That is kind of the start to fall/winter for us. We need to get these systems kind of trekking across, and eventually one will reach us. And the rest of these are not going to reach us. There's high pressure that's going to build out here. So after this kind of we'll call it next 4 to 5 days, where our rain chances. After that, we'll probably dry out for a bit. But let's see what we can get going this week. About potential cold fronts, and we talked about potential tropical moisture, and we've kind of talked about the behind the scenes, how you figure all this out. Now the bottom line is, what are we going to get? And again, this is a model forecast. This is not going to be perfect, but let's take a look at it. Obviously, Central Coast right here, and we're going to keep going. And here comes that first system. Not much for us, Bay Area northward with that one. Second one, though, on Wednesday into Thursday, you start to see the numbers, right? And that's really it for the week, so I'll stop it there. And you can see maybe a quarter, maybe 0.2 of an inch down along the Big Sur coastline. But you can also see how there's this big donut hole, interior parts, Salinas Valley, interior parts of San Benito, Monterey counties. They're probably not going to see much of anything. Santa Cruz Mountains, maybe we got a quarter or a third of an inch. And as I move this around, you'll see the numbers change, and you'll see how they kind of just fade off as you head either inland or south. So along the coast, maybe a 1/10 to 2/10 if we get lucky. Maybe a little more up in the mountains where we can kind of wring it out a little bit. And again, it's only Saturday afternoon. A lot of this isn't going to happen until Wednesday. So we certainly have a lot of days for this to improve, meaning maybe get more rain out of it, because at this point, we're always looking for rain, right? And the rain year, by the way, is going to start October 1st. So we will be adding this into the 2026 rain year. So that'll be great. Or the water year, technically. I should say. But either way, we just want to start adding up some moisture. And you can see not a lot, but it is September. September is not typically a great month for rain, so if we can get something, and we did have some tropical showers the other day, and we got about a 1/4 inch in Salinas, so we have had a little bit of rain. It has been relatively cool now with the cloud cover, and we have been relatively damp. So all good things, again, when you're looking at fire danger. We'll keep you posted on this. Again, it's just a Saturday afternoon update. We'll have more on these fronts Sunday and Monday as we get a little closer. So enjoy the weekend. Again, no rain for your weekend.